Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is a great pleasure for me to introduce Prof Wood. I've known him for quite some time, and he visited India for a workshop which we organized. And today he's going to talk about drivers for the transformation of design innovation and artificial intelligence in organization. I don't know where to begin. Chris has such an extensive experience, starting his master's and PhD at Caltech and working at AT&T Labs, and then in Texas, USAF Academy, and then Colorado and other places. More importantly, he was the teaching professor, trust and the teaching professor in engineering at University of Texas, Austin, and subsequently he led the SUTD MIT International Design Center, which is a $100 million center for almost 10 years, right, Chris?
Almost 10.
Yeah. And then Senior Associate Dean for Innovation and Engagement. He has worked in industry, DEC, IBM, several startups which he started himself, with a wide variety of founders from Air Force Labs to Naval Research, the Lean Foundation, and so on. I can go on, but what I'm going to do is to say he has more than 535 refereed publications and over 32,000 citations. He has got over 120 awards in research, design, education, and mentoring startup company, and also deals with intellectual property issues and class action legal proceedings thereof. Has been on several hundreds of being a PI or co-PI, and he's a principal fellow of the Teaching Academy and fellow of ASME. With that, I'll stop, and you will not find another person in the design community with such extensive experience both in America and in Asia. And I'm hoping that he'll come back to us and talk about the education part of his experience at a later point in time. Thank you, Chris. I hand it over to you.
Great. Sab, thank you. And dear colleagues, thank you. And I appreciate very much that introduction. And I will take you up and come and talk about education sometime. It would be a blast, either in person or online as well. So I would really enjoy that. Well, let's dive in. Let me share my screen, and I hope you'll enjoy this presentation, and I'll dissect it for you, and we'll have a blast going through it. It is multimedia, so I warn you, dear colleague, it's multimedia. So if there's a little bit of delay because we're halfway around the world, my apologies. I'll say right off the bat. So let's dive in. All right, so here's the presentation. As Sub introduced, I'll be talking about, the title of the talk is Drivers for the Transmutation of two things, design innovation and artificial intelligence, concentrating on the impact on organizations, public, private, all types of organizations from top to bottom. As I get into the talk, a couple things I'll point out to you. You'll see in my transition slides these wonderful images. Those were created by AI using Midjourney, and then putting prompts in them that are targeted at this talk. For example, what you're seeing on the screen here is what's the future of, in this case, Singapore, as we have teams working on design innovation and artificial intelligence. So I hope you'll enjoy these images as I go through. Dissecting again the presentation a little bit. So the focus is drivers, those things that cascade us, those things that inspire us, those things that make things happen. Next word in the title is transmutation, and I chose that word intentionally. We're going to bring two things together: design innovation or design thinking in the common vernacular, and artificial intelligence, of course, because of what's been happening in its growth. And transmutation isn't just the aggregation, the combination, or just putting these things together, but it really means it's going to be a change of state. And I really believe this. I think we're at an inflection point in history where artificial intelligence is going to have a big bang And of course, where's the natural place to do that but design? All right, and so it will be that change of state. As I go through my presentation, I'm going to, hope you don't mind, but I'm going to cast it in the idea of a symphony. All right, so I hope that this will send music in your ears. But the symphony will have three parts. It'll have an overture, a beginning. I'll set foundations there. It'll have a tenor, the middle, the meat, if you will, and then it'll have a short finale, and I'll wrap up the talk. So again, I hope you enjoy this symphony. Well, a little bit about me for those of you that's joining me personally here, but anyone else that gets to see this webcast. So my background is University of Texas, there for 22 years. I was an endowed professor and distinguished teaching professor there, running design for engineering and as part of the mechanical engineering program. Absolute blast. I then, fortunately, my Singapore colleagues reached out to me, and I was brought in to help start with the leadership team, the fourth national university of Singapore called Singapore University of Technology and Design, SUTD. And I had the honor to also be directing the SUTD MIT International Design Center, both in Singapore and then in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I did that for 8+ years, and then as a professor there, and then also about 10 years as the director of the IDC. And then most recently, I'm currently a professor at University of Colorado. I had a great chance here when I came here to also be part of the leadership team as the Senior Associate Dean of Innovation and Engagement. So a little bit about me. Just to give you an idea of what we've been doing in design innovation, or again, thinking this more generally as bringing the design research that's happened over the last 30 or 40 years and making it happen through design thinking. Here's some numbers. Numbers tell a story. All right, so in the last 5 to 7 years, we've been focusing on bringing design education to organizations. This is very much professional development and bringing it to people that are degreed for the continuing education. We've had over 20,000 people in the last 5+ years, over 300 workshops really driving this home. Those workshops can be anywhere from a day to 8 days long, over typically weeks. And so give you an idea of what we've been doing in design innovation. We also have been then not only bringing it to people in terms of educational forums, but also doing consultancy, running projects with organizations. We have over 120 public and private organizations that we work with worldwide. Research, of course, makes that happen, and that's where we get to not only execute design with organizations, but research it and advance it. And over $191 million has been invested in that. And then finally, some outcomes, right? And one of the outcomes is startup companies and being able to incubate startup companies, over 25 in the last 5 to 7 years. So, but numbers tell a story. That's what we've been doing in design innovation. Also, just to show you some of our partners, what you see here, this is a design innovation network map of a number of the organizations that we've been working with worldwide. And so I'll just throw up their logos. This isn't all 120, but it's a bunch of them. And you'll recognize some names up here, multinational companies like Panasonic, JP Morgan, Samsung, McKinsey, NBC Universal, and many others. You're going to see a number of small and medium enterprises up here, as well as startup companies. Design innovation is very much for all of those. So again, a little bit about me. All right, so let me get into the overture. Again, this is this beginning of the symphony. And I'm going to set foundations. I'll first set a foundation of what we mean by design innovation. And then what's the current state of artificial intelligence? And then we'll transmute them. We'll bring them together to create a change of state, this inflection point in history. So what is design innovation? Well, let me introduce it to you from the background, a foundation, depending on where you're coming from. And in terms of design thinking, we've been really fortunate as a design field to see design thinking really it's got a huge history, but really get introduced at the beginning of the 2000s, 2000, 2001, 2002, and then become part of the popular vernacular across organizations, in fact, across the populace worldwide. And you know, what is design thinking? Well, it's about working with organizations to create strategic impact and to create organizational transformation. And there are, you know, design thinking historically has been presented as the sort of three basic concepts, and you'll see some circles come up on your screen. The first is, and most importantly, and sort of what made design thinking change things, is the idea of desirability, user-driven, human-centric. That's where design begins. It's not about us, it's not about our problems, it's not about our technology, but instead really making an impact on people. So the first circle here is desirability. The second circle is now what can we do in technology and bringing new feasible technologies to make an impact on people's lives. Of course, make our lives better and also make changes that affect our society. So desirability and feasibility, the human-centric side, the technology side. The third bubble typically represented in design thinking is viability. Of course, we can't do anything we want to do to make an impact unless there's a business case. There's a business model to make it happen. So those three circles are typically the background, and where they come together, innovation happens. You know, I might add two more circles today on this background of design innovation. Another circle I might add is sustainability. Of course, given what's happening with our global climate, with environmental effects, anytime we design, we must really focus on sustainability and make it happen with the resources that we have and use them wisely. That's a fourth bubble. And then a fifth one is because of the small world in which we live. The fact that we're connected in so many ways is inclusivity. When we're designing things, it's not just about our local environment, but making it, again, have an impact worldwide. Again, so this is our foundation. These five bubbles make up design innovation. And again, where they come together, their union, innovation happens. Right, so that's the background. What's the core? What are the core pillars of design innovation? Well, there's four of them. And of course, design innovation starts with the most important, which is people. When we do design innovation, it's about the individual, it's about the team, it's about the organization, and most importantly, it's about the users and the stakeholders. So the first pillar of design innovation is people first. The second pillar is methods. And I'm a fundamental believer in this, is when we can bring well-proven and evidence-based methods to people, we create a language of design that can be shared between people, their teams, and their organization. We can also help amplify people's natural ability to do more, to do better, to be more innovative, to be more creative. So people and methods. The third pillar is process. A process that's repeatable, a process that's flexible, a process that helps guide teams to be faster, to be more efficient, to be more effective, and to manage their resources. And finally, the fourth pillar, which I love, I call it the heart, the mind and the soul of design innovation, is principles. Principles are these things that we live. If we adopt these principles, of course, design happens better, and we can do that. So again, the four pillars of design, DI as a foundation, is people, method, process, and principles. Let's see these a little bit more. So let's see the framework and the process side. What we adopted, at least in our teams, both in Asia and here in the United States, is the 4D model. You can see the double diamond on your screen. Maybe many of you are very familiar with it, but it's the 4Ds where we do sprints, and typically a project will do a half a dozen to a dozen sprints through this process, beginning with discover, user studies, human-centric, bringing empathy to bear, and really having it being data-driven as we work with people and understand their needs, their desires, their aspirations. The second D is define, and that's I love to call it the data analytics side, where we get to take data and then interpret it, reframe it, capture our insights and foresights to do really great design. So discover and define. Our third D is develop. Develop's very much about ideation on steroids, is what I like to call it. But really having so many ideas that can be combined and integrated in ways that create, again, a big splash. And then finally, the fourth D of the 4D process is deliver. In an initial sprint, that might mean prototyping, user testing, failing often, but then as sprints go on, ultimately implementing it so it's sustainable, so it gets in the hands of folks, and then ultimately, in the ideal sense, comes back, and our resources are used very wisely. So discover, define, develop, deliver, that's the 4D process, driven by the mindsets that you see there: empathy, mindfulness, joy, and non-attachment. So we've got the 4 pillars, we've got the process. What about methods? Well, we've been fortunate. We have over 200 methods in our arsenal that we run in different ways with different organizations. And over the years, we've developed a set of design method cards. We're actually in our 5th edition of these, and we tailor those, and we make them flexible and customized per organization we work with. But again, these are the language. These are the things that amplify individuals and teams to make design go. It's also, we actually test this, a little digression. We actually tested our design method cards by submitting them for an international design award. And it was really hilarious. When we submitted it, the award group came back to us, the jury did, and said, "You're submitting design method cards for a design award." And we said, "Yes, well, let's see what happens. Do what you want with it." Well, fortunately, the jury was enamored and really liked our approach. And we actually got the international award for these design method cards, which was cool. Another thing that we added to it is a design innovation handbook. And this was actually driven by all those organizations we work with. They really drove us to say, hey, we really want it codified in a way that we can distribute this, and people can have a reference, a guide, examples. So we've got a design innovation handbook that we originally published in 2021, and our 2nd edition came out this year. And again, it's award-winning in 2022. So a little bit about our people, our methods, our process, and finally, principles. You see on your screen here's 12 principles that will typically work with our organizations, and we don't really teach them, but we live with them. And you can see them on the screen. Let me focus on 4 of these just to highlight them. But some of the principles that we attempt to impart and really bring into the culture of organization is, first of all, an appetite for ambiguity. Innovation doesn't happen with well-defined design problems. It happens in that ambiguity and that uncertainty, and having design teams that have an appetite for that. A second principle is empathy for all. As human beings, we're actually not really born with empathy. Think about the baby coming out of the womb. They're hungry, they're crying, it's all about them. And as we grow and mature, ultimately as adults, it's getting that ability to be able to stand in other people's shoes, see through their eyes, and most importantly, feel with them. So very much a principle of design innovation. Here's the third one of my favorite, which we call make, test, learn, repeat. And it's that bias towards making. When you have an idea, make it. Don't try to perfect it. Get it out in people's hands, test it, learn from it. But again, find the failures and then repeat that process. And then a 4th principle, I love this one, very much came from Singapore. And if any of you have been there, it's a principle of also can, or can also. It's that optimism to overcome any barrier. All right, so that's our foundation of design innovation. Again, it's about people, methods, process, and principles. All right. So now that's the first part of the overture. Let's do a second part. And again, I hope you love the image on the screen. We asked Midjourney to say, hey, what's a futuristic view if we were looking at how AI affects society? And this is the image that was created. But let's do a foundation now on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Again, to set these scaffolding so we can look at a case study together. All right, so a brief history. I won't do all of these bullets, but again, I don't know all your background, but a brief history of artificial intelligence. My first bullet I threw up here is 1941, quite a while ago. But Isaac Asimov, I'm a science fiction buff, and that's when Isaac Asimov published, as part of science fiction, the 3 Laws of Robotics. All right, so that's a beginning point. We can then go to 1950, of course, with Turing and the Turing machine coming, of course, out of World War II, with what was done there with Enigma. We can look at when artificial intelligence was first coined, that phrase, and it was in 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth. All right, so that's when artificial intelligence really began. We see some really cool advancements, but then what I want you to notice is we're going to jump from 1957 to 1997. That's a huge jump of time, and that's sort of called the winter, the deep winter of AI, where things were happening, but actually there wasn't much advancement. And of course, that was due to computational power and other things. But in 1997, we had IBM coming out with Deep Blue, defeating champion chess players. Now, what's interesting, this is called a very basic form of AI, where of course this chess program, this AI program, could play chess with people, but of course if you asked it to play checkers or something else, it wouldn't know how. All right, so we'll see how artificial intelligence keeps advancing. Natural language processing started happening in this time frame. Deep learning being introduced in 2006. 2010, one of the earliest adoptions of AI in enterprise. 2010, not that long ago. Continuing this timeline, we see 2011, where IBM Watson came out and defeated former Jeopardy champions. Also, this is when Siri was introduced, of course, with Apple. Amazon couldn't be left behind, so 2015 Alexa was introduced, and it's of course grown greatly in the last 9 years. 2016 with the first drone flight that was actually captured as a commercial venture with Amazon in the UK just to test it out. 2017 with the invention of transformers, that concept in artificial intelligence. Of course, then BERT and GPT-1 being introduced in 2018, GPT-2 in 2019, of course, and then when it really made a splash, GPT-3 in 2020, and the world started seeing the capability. Again, that recent, which is really cool. Of course, it's advanced greatly from then, 2021 to 2023, with all of the AI engines being introduced in the market. And then I'll end the timeline with this little fact. The first lawsuit being filed against AI in 2023, where artists said, hey, wait a minute. And it was a class action suit saying, we have all our stuff out there, but it's copyrighted. And now that case hasn't seen its end yet, but we'll see where that plays out and what the push and pull will be between society and artificial intelligence. So I guess a little history. Let's look a little deeper into AI. What are some of the main areas or application domains that we see AI having an impact? And here's 8 of them. Security, of course, healthcare. There's so much data that can be tapped and mined, and machine learning can learn from. Logistics, of course, manufacturing, and then I got to catch all up there of other. But when we see these application domains, what's happening with AI in them? And so let's look, for example, at security. Things like being able to do human body analysis automatically, vehicle analysis, behavioral analysis, so intriguing. And then, of course, image processing. And that can impact the security industry in huge ways. All right, so there's a little history, some of the application domains. Where is AI going in terms of if we have a global forecast? If we're looking at so annual, compound annual growth, what's expected with AI? What would be your guess? Where will it be, for example, in 2030? Well, here's some data. 2023, we see it's already $150 billion enterprise AI is, and how it's impacting the markets. And the expectation is a compound annual growth rate of 37%. That's unheard of. If that happens, we'll see AI in 2030 be almost $1.4 trillion. Cool, right? So setting the foundations of AI here. Some other facts about AI, and I think this one you all will love, especially my Indian friends across the oceans here. What's the relative AI skill penetration in geographic areas around the world in countries? What would you say is the #1 country currently where AI is penetrated the most, and other countries that's near there? You might just guess in your mind. Well, of course, my dear Indian friends, India is #1. All right, US is 2, Germany And then my dear Singapore friends, I love showing them this as a small red dot, a small country in the world, but they're, I think, number 8 or so on the list. Now, what's intriguing about this data, though, is the penetration is actually, even though it's different per country, it's actually relatively small, as you'd expect. AI is just having its impact. It's 3% in India, 2% in the US, and so that's going to grow dramatically. In fact, if I pulled the data today, I'd probably see a huge change, even just in a few months, or these last 2 years of 2023, 2024. Again, so again, setting the foundations here, that gives a perspective of AI. But I wanted to do something else. I wanted to say, how does the everyday person think about AI when they hear about it? So what I did here is I pulled a perspective of sci-fi, and I hope you enjoy the Midjourney image on your screen. But again, asking Midjourney to say, hey, what if we look through the lens of science fiction, both publications and maybe Hollywood, a view of it, what does AI look like? And that's what you see on your screen. But let me show you a few movies and how Hollywood has portrayed AI in the last couple decades. So these movies are appearing on your screen. You should hear a little background from the upper right, you see The Matrix, one of my favorite movies, how it portrays AI. And then look at the rest of the movies as they come up. Upper left, we have, of course, Iron Man.
Wake up, Daddy Sean.
Robert Downey Jr.
Congratulations on
Tony Stark. Left, middle, we have iRobot, Will Smith, bottom left as well. In the middle, we have Arnold Schwarzenegger
Wake
with
up,
Terminator.
Daddy Sean. Welcome.
Right, we have Tom Cruise and movies there. And upper in the middle, we have Ghost with Johansson. All right, so this is how Hollywood looks at it.
Wake up, Daddy
Is this
Sean.
the reality? Well, of course it's not. AI is different than that, but it's still very cool. So here's a Midjourney image of asking Midjourney of what's the reality of AI today, not what Hollywood says. And this is what's portrayed. Of course, it looks more realistic, right? And let's look at some major advancements that we could capture from AI most recently. So here's my next screen. So upper left, of course, we're seeing OpenAI robot Figure.
Great.
Figure in this image is
Can you explain
being asked
why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
Pick up the trash, identify the apple. What do you see in front of you? And it's just amazing. Upper right, you're going to see Boston Dynamics and their robot. This is Atlas.
Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
Lower right, you're going to see a talk on healthcare. Again, the data is huge and how we can do studies there and have impact on clinical. Lower left,
can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
Video processing and images, and perhaps Hollywood's going to be a little scared. Here, for example, you see puppies playing in snow, and that's not real. That's AI generated. The reality of AI. To end this part of my overture, let's again go back to that security industry, that one of the ones we looked at on where the AI is having the most impact, and see an example application. And what you're going to see here is image processing looking at a city frontier and doing real-time data processing, of course, so that we can make good decisions as humans. So here's a little image of that. I'll play the video for you here. So you can see here's a city front, of course, image processing, and just look at see what's tracked in real time. You can identify pedestrians, bicyclists, people in automobiles. You can immediately see their speeds, their congregation, their density. You get a heat map. Where's the road versus where's pedestrian walked? You can see that immediately. And then it'll transform here, and we'll see other data of what these folks are doing in terms of how they're congregating and what their paths are. So an example where this is an application is, for example, what happened in South Korea, actually 2 years ago now, Halloween 2022, where, of course, they had a major catastrophe where they had a Halloween celebration and the density got too great and panic occurred. And unfortunately, people lost their lives. And this type of technology and security will greatly advance us. All right, so that's all right. So that's my overture. Foundations of design innovation, foundations of AI. Now let's see it all coming together. This transmutation, and I'll show you one case study here that we've created from industry data and information. Of course, I have many others that we've been able to execute, so feel free to ask me other questions. But let's go in and see what the disruption, this inflection has been as DI and AI is applied in industry. All right, so I'm gonna choose a company, and I'll give you context here. This company was the top performing publicly traded company during technology company, by the way. Let me say that technology company in the decade 2010 through 2020. Of course, that most recent decade before where we're at today. So I just want you to think in your head, predict what company was the top performing traded company in that great decade from 2010 through 2020, where we saw the greatest economic growth in history. You know, I put 5 up here. Well, you know, was it Facebook? Was it Amazon? Was it Apple? Was it Google? Was it Netflix? You know, what's your prediction? Let's let you think about it. Now, of course, I'm tricking you all. It wasn't any of those 5. In fact, the top performing tech company was Domino's Pizza. All right, I hope you're laughing. I hope you're smiling, going, "What? I don't believe you." Well, let's take a look at the data. So here's data. What you see here plotted is growth on the left. Remember, these are publicly traded companies, so you can track them in all the stock markets around the world. You see growth, percentage of growth versus time. And you can see those companies that I listed, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, they all did great. But look at what Domino's did. Approaching 2,500% growth. All right, you go, well, wait a minute, is that really a tech company? We'll see. Here's some other data. This is Domino's versus Netflix for a portion of that decade. And they actually traded places. Domino's and Netflix were actually number 1 and 2 in stock price growth for tech companies. Let's look at some others. Here's data that shows where Domino's fits with other companies. If you had in 2010, if you had put in $1,000, invested $1,000 in these companies, by 2017, not even the whole decade, what would your growth have been? Well, Domino's, that $1,000 would have turned into $21,000 plus. Oh my gosh. Netflix, $18,000 plus. Tesla, about 15,000. And you can go down the list. Isn't that cool? But yeah, Domino's, at least, you know, depending on how you look at the data, was number 1 as a tech company. All right, so what does this mean? Well, again, just to give you one last piece of data here, this was Domino's compared just to the index itself. Again, the S&P 500 as an index had unprecedented growth in that decade. And look at what Domino's did in comparison. So again, that's a little background. All right, so now I got to tell you a little bit more about Domino's. So Domino's is a company that was originally started private. Of course, they're a pizza making and delivery company. Their differential was they could deliver within 30 minutes. In fact, I, as a student in university in the 1980s, we would order Domino's pizza when we were hungry. It was relatively inexpensive. It was good. It was something that we could have. But let's rewind now to 2009, before that decade. What was happening with Domino's? Well, they were a private company, but they did a public offering in 2004. And when they did so, their earnings statement, how they came in as a public offering, was $1.5 billion revenue company. Pretty good size company. Now, what happened now? 2009, 5 years later, they were now a $1.4 billion company. Not a good investment. In fact, even worse, they were $1.5 billion in debt. And if you do the math here, that's a recipe for bankruptcy. And in fact, they were about ready to file for bankruptcy. Well, some other pieces of data, their same store sales, which is a great measure for when you have a retail store. It's a great measure of how you're doing. Their same store sales were falling 10% on average annually. Horrible. They were last place in consumer taste preference studies. And just in the U.S. alone, they closed more than 100 domestic locations. So they were in trouble. What did they do? Well, they hired a new CEO, a person that loved design, a person that loved pizza. And this person came in and created a new culture. In my view, a culture that's very much design innovation. All right, so let's take a look and see what they did. All right, so they were near bankruptcy. They were, of course, a pizza company, and they want to now transform themselves to a tech giant. They had 3 opportunities they wanted to work on as they said, hey, we got to transform our company, transform our culture, our organization. The first opportunity statement, of course, is making pizza. How might we, opportunity statement, be the market leader of pizza for our market in terms of taste and consumer preference? That's their first opportunity. Before that, the preamble is they also want to be the market leader, in fact, maybe the world leader in how you order. Make that the greatest experience for users. So how might we be the world's leader in ordering things? And then on the other end of the side is then their differential is how might we be the market and world leader in delivering? That's the 3 opportunities they're going to work on as they do design innovation to transform themselves. And so they started working on it. Of course, in the discover phase, you see the 4 Ds in the upper right-hand corner. They're going to dive into user studies, literally over tens of thousands of user needs and user responses through interviewing, focus groups, and of course the data that they capture as people submit their preferences and likes back to the company. Out of all these tens of thousands, the top 3 most frequent customer reviews were as follows. Worst excuse for a pizza I've ever had. Ooh, that's dangerous. Microwave pizza is far superior. Oh my gosh. The taste of its crust is like cardboard, right? So their user studies are telling them, hey, we got to change. Well, how did they approach this? Well, they came in with their new CEO, Patrick Doyle. They decided, and what's cool, the reason why I have all this data, they decided to do in the design innovation process, honest marketing. So as they go through this transformation process, they're going to expose all of their data and all of their results to the public, because they want the public to join on the journey with them. Isn't that so cool? What companies do that? Of course, they hide it behind the doors and walls. Well, they're going to do honest marketing. And in fact, what they did is they created a YouTube channel. Remember, 2009, created a YouTube channel, and they're going to go embark on this transformation. Well, here's Patrick Doyle telling us about that.
This is not acceptable. Bryce in Minnesota, you shouldn't have to get this from Domino's. We're better than this.
When we launched ShowUsYourPizza.com, we asked our customers to be the photographers, and we've been thrilled by the results.
But this, it really gets me upset. I'm Patrick Doyle, the CEO of this company. We're not going to fail. We aren't going to deliver pizzas like this.
Isn't that cool? All right, so now that's him really saying, hey, we're going to change the culture and transform our organization through design innovation. And so now I'll show you a video of how they actually dove into their user studies. And what I want you to notice here is you're going to see interviewing. You're going to hear from the internal people in the company. But look at who's in the room. This is how you do design innovation. Look who's in the room during these studies. Here we go.
There comes a time when you know you've got to make a change. You know, you can't lead a company like this unless you love food. I love food. I love pizza. It was about 50 years ago that they started the first store just about 5 miles from here.
2 brothers had a great idea, and they also said they wanted to get it delivered within 30 minutes, and that's something that no one said could be done. In fact, the first pizza delivery vehicle for our company is that vehicle right there. Around the 80s, we were exploding. We were the fastest growing company in the history of franchise business. Nothing had ever grown like that.
Now we're almost 9,000 restaurants around the world. We love what we do at Domino's.
Pizza, where's the love? How hard? Bread, sauce, cheese, fresh ingredients. Doesn't feel like there's much love in Domino's pizza.
Domino's pizza crust to me is like cardboard.
Is this hard to watch, this stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to watch.
I hear what some folks are saying about our stuff.
Oh, this one's bad. Worst excuse for pizza I've ever had.
The sauce tastes like ketchup?
Totally void of flavor.
You know what? When you first hear it, it's shocking.
Cardboard complaint is the most common one.
This we hear over and over and over.
I mean, that hits you right in the heart. This is what we've done. This is what I've done, for 25 years now.
You can either
Yeah, so they're gonna make a change, right? So they went on this very much user connection, this honest marketing and connect people, and they did things like they made offerings to folks like show your pizza, and they asked people to send their greatest pizza experiences in photos and then tell them the stories. Design innovation is very much about storytelling, and offered the people rewards and vouchers, and they learned from that. And what was cool is as they were learning, they also opportunities, which is great in design innovation, they emerge. These emergence things happen. And one of the new opportunities or sub-opportunities they found is that one of the things that they learned from all these stories is people's experiences in actually all the storefronts, all the franchises. When they came in, they didn't feel like they were loved. They didn't feel like they were appreciated, and it wasn't user-centric. So they actually changed that with that opportunity. Every employee in the company, the janitor, the cashier, anyone, when a customer had a complaint, they could immediately fix it. Give them a voucher, give them another pizza, bring a smile and happiness to all of their users as they experience this. And so that was a spin-off. But what did they ultimately do in making pizza? Well, of course, they changed what they did. They learned from all of those user studies, and they created their new pizza offerings. And here, what you see on the screen is an example of a blind test, an anonymous test that was done for pizza tasting. This was actually during the pandemic, 2020, and the Domino's came out number one. All right, so that opportunity, they achieved their goal, being the market leader in pizza taste. Well, what was their second opportunity? So now we'll go to the preamble. They wanted to be the world's leader of delivery. So the opportunity statement, I love this. This is their reframe. How might we make it as easy and efficient as possible for any customer with a smartphone to order a pizza in the 17 seconds it takes for a light to turn green at a stoplight? Don't you love that? It's got a metric in it. It's reframed based on all of their user study learnings. And the point here is making this the most convenient people as they're heading home to order a pizza. Well, what was their innovation solution there? Well, here they're going to start bringing in AI. They're going to do what is called omni-channeling. So you can pick, when you pick up a device, any device, it can be your smartphone, your tablet, your computer, your smartwatch, the interface, the user interface and user experience is all the same. And they made this omni-channeling expression of that. In fact, they made deals with automobile companies. So the console on the automobile would come up and it would be the same interface when you order your pizza. Isn't that cool? Well, one of the things they learned on very early there is people wanted to ask questions, and they wanted their answer in seconds. So they didn't only create this omni-channel, they created a new employee of the company, Dom. Here's Dom. Dom was an AI. You could ask Dom anything, and Dom would give you the response you need so that you could have the greatest experience with Domino's. And of course, this is well before ChatGPT and an AI being implemented in this transmutation of DI and AI. Well, they didn't just stop there, all right? So they also made a deal with Twitter, now X, all right? But they wanted to do this concept that they came up with of what's called zero-click ordering. So you'd have your Twitter channel, and it would remember your previous orders, and you'd say, hey, remember my order from here? Order that. No clicking. And then the order would go out, or you could just speak to it, and the order would happen. So what a cool concept, right? And now you might think about, well, what's the next innovation? Remember, they're going to apply DI, and they're going to continue to evolve. The change happens continuously and immediately. What would be the next thing they would do? They've got omni-channeling. They got DOM, zero clicking. Well, what they decided to do was AR. Here's their augmented reality implementation for pizza ordering. Isn't that cool? So now you can make your pizza on the screen in 3D, and that better be how the pizza's delivered to you. So they've done making, they've done ordering. What about the end? You know, and they're differential in delivery. So their opportunity here is how can we be world leader in delivery? What did they create there? Well, the first thing they created is what's called a DXP fleet. And they worked with Chevrolet to do this. They created this fleet of Chevrolet Spark vehicles. And notice it's all branded, so they get all their advertising with Domino's. But most importantly, do you see in the back there, do you see that little chamber in the back of the car? That's an environmental chamber that they innovated. And the idea was when the pizza comes out of the oven, it gets put in this chamber. It doesn't cook it anymore, but it keeps it just at that state like it just came out of the oven. So when it's delivered, it's as if you were at the storefront. Isn't that cool? But again, they're not stopping here. They also created Drew robots. This was done in New Zealand, and autonomous vehicles that would deliver their pizzas. Isn't that cool? They also did autonomous vehicles, the Neuro R2 in the Silicon Valley, and they actually had these running around, all tested, and they work. And so they're poised whenever AV actually happens in cities and nations, they're ready to go. But again, what would be their next thing? Remember, they're innovating on the fly here with the design innovation process. What would they do next? They've got autonomous vehicles. They got their DXP fleet. I think you all could probably guess this. They're going to do drones. So here's a drone delivery example that they did in an agreement in Auckland, New Zealand. Here we go. And there it's delivering with a big old target on the lawn. I don't know about that target. Well, let me end my tenor here, and I'm going to wrap up my talk. But let me end my tenor here with what did we learn here? This was the transmutation of design innovation and artificial intelligence, again, for one company. But they changed their company from near bankruptcy to be a tech giant. In fact, if you look at this company, what's the moral of the story? Well, bottom line is, originally it was a pizza company, but what they really became is a technology company, disguised as a marketing company, disguised as a pizza company. And they were really being transparent, making user happen, and there's, you know, it's never too late to change. In fact, they're changing continuously. Well, I hope you enjoyed design innovation in action with that case study and us pulling the data from Domino's. Let me wrap up my symphony here, my overture, my tenor, and now let's have a little bit of finale. In the time I have left, I'll state maybe 10 drivers of how we can bring this transmutation of DI and AI to any organization. Well, number one on the list, it's bringing a culture of design innovation, transforming it from top to bottom and everything in the middle, and making that culture happen. That's the first driver. A second driver is, you know, growing skill sets and mindsets in AI and ML, and every organization's going to need to invest in this. You know, everybody in the organization is going to have a literacy in artificial intelligence and machine learning. A third driver is empowering that stakeholder and human-centric focus, and it's not necessarily natural. You know, many companies still haven't really embraced this, and it will ultimately need to be embraced by every organization. A fourth driver is, you know, identifying those data sets. You know, that's what AI and ML is good at. Every organization has all this data stored. How can we tap it, learn from it, and create our differentials? A fifth driver is, you know, balancing incremental and disruptive innovation. As a company goes through, as you saw with Domino's, seeing those spiral opportunity statements where we can innovate immediately, incrementally, but of course, shoot for the bang with disruptive innovation. A sixth one is forming strategic partnerships. No organization is going to be good at everything. No organization is going to be able to invest in both DI and AI to the 100th percentile. So forming those strategic relationships to make things happen so that organization can move forward. A seventh one here, creating and embedding core teams of DI and AI ML. These core teams will be sort of like SWAT teams. They move from project to project agilely and can bring that expertise to teams when they need it. Another driver is, investing, staying at the forefront, investing in applied research. And as many of us that are academics, we love that, right? Bringing our research and making it happen in technology. Targeting the bookends is another driver. To make DI happen in an organization, you need championing from the C-suite. They have to believe in it. They need to believe it and broadcast it, like you saw Patrick Doyle do. And then having those predisposed people on the ground that make it happen, that want to see it happen, the entrepreneurs of organizations. And then finally, the driver is you have to realize value and revenue generation and choosing those initial first projects to make it happen. Well, I'm at my time, so let me end the talk here and just say I hope you've enjoyed this symphony. I hope I've inspired you, got you to think maybe a little bit differently on this transmutation, this change of state, this inflection and revolution of design innovation and artificial intelligence. And our goal, personally, me and my teams, is to embed design innovation in every organization and hopefully transform the world. So, thank you. That is my presentation for today.
Thank you very much, Felix, for a wonderful presentation and taking us to history of artificial intelligence and where it has come today and how it is make a transformation. I want to make one comment about your design methods cards, but I think this is something we have been not having in the design community for a long time. I'm sure you know that Clarkson also created a set of cards for a certain type of applications. Yeah. And also, if you go back, many people who worked in Apple in the early days, they also created a book and a set of cards. And we see this in the industrial design community to some extent, but we don't see it in the design community. From that point of view, I want to really thank you and congratulate you for doing that. But the other thing it also provides is that people have to choose the method to the context from the cards. So there is an exercise of actually understanding the composition of methods in themselves. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. I will talk to you more later on. But for now, I think I should let other people ask questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Sab. One comment on your comment is one thing we found is that investing in that initial training, investing where we actually work with organizations, not just to teach them, but actually we take their opportunity statements, and as they learn the DI process, they actually execute it directly on those projects. And the design method cards and other things have a huge impact. The other thing we found is there's sort of this sweet spot of about 25 methods that tend to work in almost all organizations immediately. And we have those. That's what we bring to them immediately. And then as they learn that, they dive off and then explore other methods and learn that context. So I appreciate your comment.
The other thing that is important, if I may make a comment, is that you're not imposing the composition of methods. You're just giving them the collection of methods to choose from in a combinatorial sense to a particular context. And that frees them of being forced into a corner of using a method,
no doubt,
a particular collection of methods.
Yeah, and
anyway,
our emphasis is, when we want them to customize it, we want them to make it their own.
Exactly.
We want them to have their own passion and make these things, make their own choices, and that's very much what they do. So thank you, Sab. Very much appreciate that. Good. Any other comments or questions? Anything I can clarify, dear colleagues?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Good evening, sir. Yeah, my name is Shivam Jaswal, and I'm a PhD student at the Department of Design, IIT Delhi. My supervisor is Professor Srinivasan. Hope you must be knowing about him. He did work with you also.
Of course.
Yeah. So I'm doing research on design prototyping. So I would like to know from you, what would be the role of AI in design prototyping?
Oh, it's a great question. Of course, that's an open-ended question. But first of all, please send my regards to Srinivasan.
Definitely.
I miss him dearly, and I know he's very successful at IIT Delhi. So I'm happy that you're working with him. Well, prototype, it's fascinating. So let's just talk about the range of prototypes. You know, prototypes can be physical mock-ups.
Yes.
They can be they can be subsystems or the system level. You know,
Yes.
prototypes can be storyboards, role
Yes.
playing. Prototypes can be wireframes. They can be
Right.
digital, physical, and all the mixes of those. So you can imagine, let's just start on the digital side. Imagine telling an AI, describing your solution just in text, and having it create a 30-second video immediately, and then sharing that video with users. Literally in 5 minutes, you can get feedback. So AI can do that now. We just were in Saudi Arabia working with an organization there. In a day and a half, we ran a full sprint of the DI process. They all had about 90 concepts were developed. They down selected to 8, and we had videos on those 8 in a day and a half. And now they're out sharing them with their users and getting feedback. So that's the low-hanging fruit. Another one is, I don't know if you're familiar with the application Viscom, but what you can actually create a sketch of your concept, throw it in Viscom, and it will make it look real. That's AI immediately, right? So it's boundless. I think what it'll help us do is take our principle of make, test, learn, repeat, and do it at levels we've never seen before. It will help us run sprints faster than we've ever done before, and it again will put things in people's hands, which is the most important thing, and we can hear from our stakeholders and our users. So it's infinite, but those are a couple examples. I hope those examples made sense.
Yeah, I do agree with you. So even when we talk about different prototyping strategies,
I think
like
we should
even if
have other people.
Well, so if you don't mind, I'll do really quickly, give you some thoughts on that. You know, the low-hanging fruit we've already been doing, right? So there's so many engines out there for AI, and so just designers being able to tap into those, and teaching them how to be prompt engineers. It sounds so trivial, and in fact, AI will probably subsume it soon enough. But just being a prompt engineer to write good prompts so the AI can give you meaningful results and not hallucinations. That's a low-hanging fruit. We've been doing that with every organization. And the next low-hanging fruit is getting with organizations and identifying that first set of data that they can apply machine learning on to get unexpected and transformative results that they've never seen before. Those are two pieces that we see design happening immediately. Then there's many others, but hopefully we can talk more sometime.
Thank you.
This is Shyam Sundar. Thank you for an excellent talk, especially the Domino's example. I was wondering if the competitors like Little Caesars, Pizza Hut, and other Papa John's, have they imitated their adoption of DI and AI?
No, it's a really great question. What's interesting is they haven't necessarily done so. So in the U.S., and these are the pizza companies that came out of the U.S., like Little Caesars, Papa John's, and Domino's. Little Caesars and Papa John's have had their share of the market, and they tend to they make adjustments on their offering of food, how they advertise it, and they're very creative with that. But the investment that Domino's did was a big investment, and you can see it didn't happen overnight. They had to go through this process and connect with this honest marketing. In fact, all the other pizza companies were actually laughing at them when they were doing it. They were waiting for them to fail, and when they succeeded, they didn't transform themselves in the same way because it's the U.S. They didn't have that investment. And Domino's has been continuing on, but still, Little Caesars has their following. Papa John's has their following. Their market share has actually shrunk compared to Domino's, but I can say honestly they have not done the same thing. But I actually believe that just because it's a big market, even just in the U.S., 350 million people, there's still some of the share to go around. And Domino's did the commitment, and they made it happen. But it's not unless you're willing to change your organization, it's not as easy to follow. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the future. But thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, one question, Chris. Thank you for the presentation, but this is more related to, say, for example, if Domino's has to extend that same presence in an Indian market, right? So whether the AI models that they built to understand the process parameters to get the right pizza, will it also make sense in an Indian context?
Well, so I haven't studied the Indian context, so I don't know that, but we've done Japan. So we actually followed Domino's in Japan. So at least Asian area. And what's interesting is it's completely different. It's the same approach, but with the culture of Japan. And so I actually have friends that took their experience of Domino's in the US and went to Japan. The pizzas are different. The storefront's different. How they use the data and information and how they do delivery is different because it's Japan. But what was interesting is the approach that they had, the design integration approach, and how they created their user interfaces, their omni-channeling and other things was then modified to meet that culture. And that's the power of design innovation. And it happened quickly. The reason it happened quickly because they were able to replicate the approach. And that was what was fascinating. But no, completely different. You can imagine in Japan, if you had to guess, what's their mode of delivery? It's bicycles. It's not a DXP fleet. And they made it happen with that cultural context.
So the AI models need to be localized to different contexts, isn't it? Yeah.
Especially when it's culture. Yes, that's what they found. So there was some things that still transferred over. You know, their ability to do environmental chambers and those innovations that they had, that translated over. Their ability to do omni-channeling and DOM translated over. But when DOM answers in Japanese, it's much different than DOM answering in English because it's trained on a different data set. And that's what's cool. I hope that was an interesting answer to your question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions, we will bring this talk to an end. And please, I think you can see any of the things Chris has talked about, the book, the methods. I'm sure they will be accessible to people who would like to get them. And I think that would be a good start to start a conversation as well. Thank you very much, Chris. And let's keep in touch.
Next talk.
Yeah, nice talk. And we would like you to come back and talk about other educational experiences. That would be fantastic.
I would be happy to. So Sab, thank you so much for hosting me. Dear colleagues, thank you for hosting me. Please have a great evening there. Reach out to me anytime. Everything I showed you is open source. I'm happy to share it with you. So let's innovate together. Let's transmute AI and DI together. Everybody have a great evening there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.